Yeah, from my situation, I guess you could say there was some similarity because I knew something was up because the former chief, he decided not to run, and then he sort of appointed his buddy to run, so he channeled all his votes, and that was the same chief. I did you ever hear of the 2018 cannabis gathering when we had all the First Nation communities go to Sudbury?
No. Oh, the meeting of the association, the
Yes,
first. Yes, yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
that's what they're actually talking about because I tried to actually let somebody know, and they tried to attend that meeting. They were told they couldn't go in. It was only for like Isidore Day. He was there. I guess he was there, and he was saying,
Okay, this isn't the one that I'm familiar with.
"Okay, no,
Then
this was the right at the beginning. Right at the beginning. They call it the cannabis gathering. It was I think it was 2017, 2018. So, anyways, when they had that meeting, I was aware of it, and then shortly after that, we got a new chief in, and he was in his campaign. He was saying he was for cannabis and all this um, jargon or whatever he was talking about in his campaign. And once he got in there, he was not for it, and he was doing these marches and everything like that. So it stopped. And shortly after that, I think he was in there for about maybe 2 months, 3 months, and that's when the police came to the res. It was the same time they started. They started out in. I think they started out in AOK first, and they came around this way. And the next thing I know, that same week, that's when they showed up at my place of business, and I was told, you know,
and you were saying these were UCCM police.
yeah,
So
yeah,
how would they have jurisdiction here?
that's what I couldn't understand, because my friend there from AOK, he let me know who was who came to his place
Yeah.
basically.
They would have jurisdiction here.
They would too, yeah, just like AP. Okay,
How would they?
They actually have more jurisdiction than the OPP, so
How is that?
they can enforce other federal laws.
The UCCM?
Yeah, they're like Indian Act. If they had to enforce the Indian Act, they could.
Why is that? Why is that, or how are they?
Well, they have to be given a federal designation too, rather than just going through the OPP college. You know, you get a federal designation too. So because they're on presumably federal land.
But now, do they have their own policing agreement, or are they in the same situation as the others that haven't been renewed since
You mean
1996?
UCCM?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the same.
well, that's what I found kind of weird because when they originally started, they started on the island and they ended up over here, and I was thinking like it almost seemed like our APS was even surprised that you know what I mean. They just showed up, and they had I guess the officer, the OPP officer that came to my business and was talking to me. He was there. There was three of them.
So what do you see, Del, as the biggest challenges facing the indigenous cannabis industry?
Total misunderstanding, ignorance of government in dealing with First Nations on this from the beginning, and they left things kind of in a confused state. But what's has caused me to come out and try to have everyone understand where everything sits in terms of Aboriginal treaty rights and federal and provincial law. Where are they, and what? And how about the politics? What can John A. MacDonald, Chief and Councils, do? And well, having all the experience I have, and even having taught it myself, uh, they've got no authority in the Indian Act, and their total authority is set in the Indian Act, and now I also understand that they are considered a legal entity, so they can't be an Indian, and so it, you know, as time goes on, things seem to get more confusing. So this adds to the confusion, and so not being an Indian, how can they deal with lands and rights? There's a conflict there, and if they do what the minister tells them to do on that, it's total conflict because uh, they are totally responsible to the minister. They are essentially servants to the minister. He pays them, and then they do his ghetto programs for him. But they don't have any authority to do anything else, and that so that's a problem, big problem. So they can't pass any laws. Uh, weed or those things that there's nothing in India Act about it. Not even anything about moratoriums. You can't even do a moratorium because it doesn't provide anything for that. And then again, I mean, because there's this no no power thing, even band council resolutions are not legal documents. So they can put it on that, and they can use it as approval for their spending and that things like that. But other than that, John A. McDonnell painted them in the corner, and it's not their fault. And so these things probably have to be fixed. And then I guess the question is, who is the real power? The real power was from your clans, and of course the old traditional chiefs. They had power, and they were the ones that made treaties and made arrangements. And that group would still have the real power over your nation. You are a nation, and that being a nation separates you from the province too, because province is not a nation. It's just I tell everybody administrative unit of the federal government. So you you have to stick to your original way of doing business, and that's nation to nation. So you only deal with the feds on this stuff. But this again confuses having to live in a province, and how the hell did the province get involved in all this stuff anyway? And then we have to go through the BNA Act. What the hell is it all about? But that's another long story. But as you can see, the confusion that comes out from all of this, and so what is a poor chief of council going to do? They got no options because, well, they have tried to give them a little more authority in this lands agreement stuff, but there's also some problems coming ahead in the future. If they've taken the money, then they also signed an obligation to tax everybody within 10 years. So, and that goes against your treaty and your Rowan Proclamation and your Aboriginal rights. Now, how do you justify that council doing that to the people? And so that's a lot of confusion there. And how do you resolve it? Well, essentially, I think the basics are there. You have to somehow resurrect your original power as a nation. Grant, maybe the current chiefs and councils authority to do their programs. That's all they have to. That's all they're there for, to do programs, government programs. And I don't know, probably the most important thing for any First Nation. You make your own decisions on what direction you're going to go, what kind of economy you're going to build for yourself here. Don't ever trust the government again with something like that, because you see the results. Nothing. 150 years of nothing. And again, just now, as I once told somebody who didn't want to make a decision right away, I said, well, once in a while, you got to take the bull by the tail and face the situation. Sometimes it's it's really hard to get something going too, because right from the startup, you always tend to have lots of opposition, lots of people saying, "No, he can't do it." You know,
Yeah.
it's always a struggle, but in the end, you get going. Hey, you did it. It'll inspire somebody else, and maybe that's what's needed, is get more things going and get more people to expand, try things, do things. Sometimes the first things don't always work. Try again. I've heard of people who take 5 times before they were successful. But they never give up, and that's
Just sometimes 30 times, eh? Think of it, 35 times failures.
yeah. But there's a few hurdles to overcome yet. But hopefully, people can sit down and begin to work these things out. And let's get rid of this racism in Canada. Let's have a fair distribution of resources so that the First Nations people can develop their economies and at least give a standard of living to their people that's equal to Canadians.
So Peter, what do you think are the sort of issues that are facing you in terms of growing your shop? Like, do you feel comfortable advertising or putting your sign out or being public about
Well,
what you're doing?
I've been doing it ever since I had the first issue with the police force. It was a couple of years ago. But I kept doing it anyways, and a lot of people are aware in the community I was doing it. Nobody was saying anything, but I didn't really advertise until I went to that one meeting in Shawanaga, and and I received a certificate to 35, section 35, and so I put it on the wall, and after that I made a web page and I put it up there, and I said, okay, I'm open, and then I put Creator's Choice put the other sign out there for me, and I'm getting another one made actually for my store 420. It's got an arrow pointing to the other building, and I just feel like like I said, after multiple petitions and trying to speak with chief and council, former chief and council, nothing led to anything. So I basically stepped up, and I think more people need to do that.
Yeah.
Enough's enough. Are we going to wait forever to receive an answer before we can do something? Or are we going to make it happen now? And sometimes you got to face the consequence to get a point across. And
But you've done yours
yeah,
in a traditional manner then.
yeah,
And you're fully protected under Section 35 and 25.
yeah, good.
Did you think, Del, when you were negotiating those sections of the Constitution, that they would play out in something like this kind of a way, or on the economic front, or was it just the idea to try to cover everything?
I knew exactly what I was doing, and it was to do to help the development of the First Nations again, so that they would become viable entities in the world. Oh, I knew exactly what I was doing, and I know exactly what we mean in those sections.
And that's become an issue because the Canadian courts have taken their own interpretation of what Aboriginal rights mean and made that very restrictive.
Yeah, and that is very racist, extremely racist. And this is why we're still in a position where we, if we want to do anything, we face the all-white jury. That's just part of the all-white jury. And of course, they're just lawyers relying on somebody's legal opinion. I don't know where that comes from, and that bucks up against our rights. Our rights don't change any, and I've seen 1,000 opinions. As far as I'm concerned, those legal opinions are meaningless when it comes to our rights, and that's what I put in the Constitution.
Could you talk a little bit about your efforts to educate the OPP and the APS about those constitutionally protected rights when it comes to cannabis?
Yeah, of course, when I got involved in this, a lot of the parties were at odds, and especially with the police. So, and of course, I wanted to understand what's really happening here. So, what it came down to was after cannabis, of course, was made into law and could be sold in stores. I guess a big question by the federal and provincial government. Well, who's going to control the stores and the reserves? Which one of us two? The province or the feds? But it's got to be one of us. It can't be the Indians. That's what the problem was. But now, a lot of the First Nations, they just taken that back, and the province doesn't have any authority in the First Nation anyway, you know. And I always like to know, how did you get? How did you draw your boundaries around the treaty areas without ever talking to the people? And what are you doing on their treaty areas without asking them? These issues have to be resolved, and at some point, I'm sure they will.
I'm glad actually more people are actually standing up, and out here I wish more people would stand up.
Yeah.
Like I have attended a couple of the meetings at North Shore Initial Cannabis Association, and a lot of the people I went with, we talked about it a little bit, but it didn't go beyond that. I pushed it all the time, and I didn't back down, and I knew I wasn't going to, and I feel good because I have the ability and strength to deal with it.
Yeah.
And listening to you guys and going to your meetings and hearing other individuals in the same situation actually built my confidence up, and yeah, it's a good thing. And I've been an entrepreneur probably for half my life since I've been here. A lot of I've gone to college and graduated from various programs, but I was never able to get a permanent job on the reserve. It was always a contract job. You can't build your life around that. So I started a little store, and it's been like probably 22, 23 years, and then the cannabis thing came in a couple of years, and I decided to jump in there, and it's even better now. It's coming in, and business, and I'm able to employ some people, and it's job stability. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. And it could only lead to good things if it's followed through correctly. So
We're looking at this whole problem of clash between feds, province, and First Nations.
Yeah.
And some of the reasons behind it, and because of that, what happens to people like him that are trying to set up a business when nobody knows who has authority here or there. So essentially what I've been doing with my kind of experience and my expertise is probably maybe one of the foremost experts on Aboriginal treaty rights in Canada, because I did put those 4 sections in the Canadian Constitution, and I know what the hell they mean. I realize that, hey, rights are at the top. So let's figure out where the feds are and the province are, and where the First Nations are. And there seems to be some problems with the First Nations governing structure, so let's have a look at that too. So I explain that all, and essentially the first problem started when the feds were supposed to talk to us. They didn't, but yet they pushed the cannabis law through and gave the provinces the right to issue licenses. But the provinces has no authority to issue licenses on reserve, so they can't. They have no authority to even come on the reserve unless they're invited by an Indian. So now the situation is really getting confusing. Then the feds figure out that, well, hey, we can't charge anybody on the reserve, and then to make things even more confusing, you can't use the Indian Act because there's no such word or consideration for the word cannabis. And matter of fact, chief and council don't have any authority whatsoever except for I think the feds left them 2 areas, noxious weeds and beekeeping. So they've spent 150 years busy on that. But no, so so they're essentially like a eunuch there. They can't do anything anyway, and feds are confused. The province is confused, and when somebody asks them to do something, they send the province in one situation, and well, the province got no authority, and it's so it and then it can't explain where its authority comes from. So what do you do? And how do you deal with these things in court? You can't.
You gotta have a base.
Yeah. So and then now you force all the First Nation people that do get charged, and some have, to use the Constitution protection, and it's there for them, and I'm sure they'll win these things. But it also means that all the parties got to sit down at some point. Let's figure this thing out, and let's start to. And on behalf of First Nation, I'm saying this on their behalf. They've got to start to make all the decisions themselves. You can't let Indian Affairs make decisions for you. You can't let the province come in and enforce things on you. You've got to be able to do all of that, make all your own decisions, decide where you're going to go in the future, and if you make any mistakes, it's on you.
I would say for the last 3-4 years,
Yep.
I've been doing my best grabbing these guys by the pants pocket from signing with Ontario.
Yeah.
And they've been sneaky at times and this and that. And
Yeah.
I just get frustrated with that kind of nonsense myself, kind
Yeah.
of thing. Nobody, an adult can be straight to my face and blah 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 kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like,
So that's that's
even
the
before-
situation we're in, and
yeah.
well, I've been telling people. Well, my background is I've done land claims for years and years, By 60, 70, they're probably all solved today. Did 3 for my own community. So I'd become an expert in Aboriginal treaty rights, which set me up to get it put in the Constitution as a national leader. And that's what I did. I said I was going to do it, and I did it.
Sure, yeah. My own self, I've been doing this 12 years maybe. I didn't wait for no permission from nobody, nothing. And still today, I'm still doing it. I got a heavily armed arrested the very first time, like about 2009 or 11, 10, somewhere around there. Traumatized my son and blah blah blah. I went to the guy who
Yeah.
made the call.
Yeah.
And then but I know there's not, these people think, oh, I don't know how things work, kind of thing, eh? So I still stand, I guess, tell Peter, do what you want, but
Yeah.
arm yourself with some good information
Mhm.
about our original constitutional
Yeah.
Rowan. That's before this other bullshit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Rowan is very important and part of
For sure.
your boundaries. And I don't know. I used to do land claims, so I know the whole process of what you'd have to do to determine if you still have your original boundaries there, and what else is involved in your rights. So they're mixed together.
I could be very more aggressive about what we're talking about here, but our community is overrun with opiates.
Yeah.
There's barely a business anymore. I know what good business used to be, and I think my own self, nobody else is doing anything, so I'm going to build a warrior society and get these freaking people out of here.
Oh, hey, and that's so important.
Before
them yet,
before I
because-
get serious with
yeah.
cannabis, we got to
Yeah.
get that other thing out of the way here.
Yeah.
This is what I see, eh?
Yeah.
You know, like I haven't got my hands dirty with this yet. But the other night, my sons were walking, and they got threatened by a non-member, non-indigenous guy for throwing something at their truck. These guys don't do this shit. You're just trying to raise shit. But they had another guy with them. He went walking towards that guy, got out of the truck. Once he seen the size of this freaking guy, he got back in his truck and got smart. He got out of it. But there's other things like what's been found. Our ancestors, our babies. Things are lots of things are in the way, kind of thing, eh? It's 2021 has become very, not confusing, but pretty heavy, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty heavy. Myself, I wanna build a language culture camp. I'm familiar with the culture. I'm familiar with language. I'm familiar with hunting, trapping, growing, fishing. These young people need a base to get started with. Like even my own self, I've known Tom like 4 years. He's seen my son with me all over the place. We put a lot of miles in our old Grand Prix, and it was interesting and very good people all over the place. Eh? All the same. I like dealing with cannabis because nothing but the best people come to my house.
Yeah.
They're courteous,
Yeah.
you know, they're polite, and they observe my no later than 10:30 rule. And I never believe I was hurting anybody, but the community seemed to think I was hurting people. They need re-education. They don't need no education now because we already had 4 deaths to this other thing. And violence.
Yeah.
We got
It's all
pulled.
over the place.
We got pulled away from work yesterday because somebody walking around with a freaking gun here. It's just,
And I just come from another place that just had
yeah.
dealing with 3 of them. So
I was going to try to make it with you yesterday, like I'm sort of part of Wiki. My dad's from Wiki, eh?
Yeah.
I was raised way the hell down the river over there. I know all these guys. Peter, know since I was a little kid and stuff.
You should have heard me earlier. I did a rendition on the land claim on the Manitoba. I'm an expert, so yeah. The way I would do it is, of course, far different than what they're doing. You know, they're trying to do piecemeal stuff. All they're doing is one huge delay.
Yeah,
That's all it's doing.
that's
The feds know that.
our leadership has got a shitload of Indianness. Listen, that's what. You guys not too bad. There's a couple councils not too bad. Actually, one guy is going to pick me up here this evening. We're going to talk about the latest events and stuff like that. I talk to this guy about once or twice a month to come pick me up and go for a ride. I think we're going to have to get pretty heavy over here because there is no other way.
Oh yeah, no. They're the feds are scheming all the time, and what they're doing now is they're paying off the John A. MacDonald Chief and Councils, who shouldn't even be called Chief and Councils. I tell people they should be just called John A. MacDonald Clubs, because that's all they are, and they have no authority. So they're being paid off to try to implement
All the way to the top. they're paying people off.
some of one of their crazy plans were, if they take $2 or $3 million or whatever is on the table for them, based on their population and whatever, then the federal government will give them the opportunity to tax everybody in 10 years.
Yeah.
Or that's an obligation on them. They have to tax everybody in 10 years. And unfortunately, a lot of people have done this. But the other problem is, if they accept that, then only 25% of the voters can pass anything. And if that doesn't go through, then call another one where 2 out of 3 can pass it. It's really stacked against First Nations. It's a bunch of nonsense. Down home, I analyzed that for them, and our First Nation just threw it out immediately. And
These new
but
token
because
people.
what First Nation is going to have a roaring economy in 10 years? How well have they done in the last 10 years? So you see where things are going. No, and we want to get the message out to as many people as we can. We're essentially, well, in a way, we were dealing with some of the issues chiefs and councils have, and what the kind of problems they have, and why they can't deal with these issues. And essentially, I'm saying, well, they can't pass any laws. They have no authority. They essentially just manage, programs, and they're now considered a corporation, or like a corporation. They can sue and be sued. So they're not an Indian anymore. Chief and council, although each individual ones are.
Yeah.
And as individuals, they have
They're
Aboriginal
recognized,
treaty
yeah.
rights, but your chief and council doesn't. You know, now how does this affect your lands and your rights? So that's the kinds of problems the whole setup of this under John A. MacDonald has caused now. And now, how do we fix it? That's where we're at now. How do we fix it? And hey, are we going to let Indian Affairs have another 150 years of running your household? What has it done? Look at the condition of our people. They all live in ghettos, and that's no good. Let's stop their interference in the operations of your nation. Make your own decisions. Decide where you're going to go in the future. Set up your own mechanisms on how you're going to control things, you know. But it'll be you. It'll be up to you. And fix what you think is broken and make it right.
I,
But you got to involve lots of people, so you're
yeah,
going
that's
to
what I
involve
was,
your
you know,
clans,
even
all your
like right
clans.
now, some of the chief and councillors should be sitting here and learning, you know. Yeah.
I'm the guy that put 4 sections in the Canadian Constitution that protect your Aboriginal treaty rights. And I'm the guy that set up the Assembly of First Nations.
Yeah, okay.
And I also did a couple of terms as president of the Union of Ontario Indians.
Yes, okay.
And
I
I
got you
also
now.
was chief of my community for a couple of terms. I brought in millions of dollars worth of projects for them. They couldn't give up to me.
Yeah,
But
you know,
you know, and today, well, I'm also a residential school survivor,
uh,
and the only one in Canada. I guess that's that damn fighter in me. Only one in Canada that took them on in court. You know.
yeah.
And they took me 22 years to finally get to where they had to go to court or settle with me. And they just said, "Here's the money." And no conditions. I said, "There's absolutely no way I'm going to have any conditions because I've been right about this." My book is done, and I've gone a little further than just residential school. I've also explained a lot about Aboriginal treaty rights, you know, and how to understand it a lot better, and how it got in the Constitution, you know, all the organizing that has to go along with that.
Yeah, because our council, man, it treats us like we don't matter, like
Hey,
they don't
hey,
listen.
you know that's happening all over the country. Well, like I said, they're not responsible to the people; they're responsible to the minister. The minister,
Yeah.
government is trying to use chief and council because they're in such a vulnerable position too, with no authority. So,
Hey,